Today, I'm going to be addressing a rumor that has been being thrown around the internet for a while now, but has only very recently begun to be taken seriously. I assume some of you have already heard this rumor, and I assume some of you haven't. But in short, there are apparently these reports from a source who has provided credible and accurate spoilers on Star Wars and other big movies before, which are claiming that Lucasfilm essentially plans to throw the sequel trilogy away, to deem it as Legends material, removing it from canon, and basically starting from scratch. Now, what exactly does that mean, and how would it all be pulled together? Well, it's actually quite simple. For those of you who are familiar with Star Wars Rebels, you will know of this realm known as the World Between Worlds, which grants anyone who enters it access to all walks of time, past, present, and future. They can interact with these portals and actually change things from the past. So essentially, the explanation that we are being given is that Emperor Palpatine had a room, which is sort of like the World Between Worlds, installed on the Death Star. This Room of Mirrors, as it's being called, played a major role in Palpatine clouding his presence from the Jedi Council in the prequels, and it's also what allowed him to survive his fall on the Death Star. And then he somehow transported himself to Exegol. And what the rumors are saying is that the very simple change, which will be implemented in some way, is that somebody will enter this veil and prevent Palpatine from making it to Exegol in the first place. This, very plainly, will erase Palpatine's survival after Return of the Jedi, thus drastically changing everything we saw in the sequel trilogy, and essentially throwing everything we know with Disney Star Wars after Return of the Jedi out the window. Now, there are a few glaring holes here that pretty obviously falsify this rumor to me. First, that change would also essentially erase The Mandalorian as well, or at the very least, drastically change the storyline since this show takes place after Return of the Jedi. And it isn't any secret that that show is one of Disney's great successes with Star Wars so far. And the second reason is, it has already been confirmed that Palpatine did actually die in Episode 6, and the man we saw in Episode 9 was actually a clone. Or at least something similar to that. I believe in the novel he refers to himself as more than a clone, less than a man. So there are some very glaring problems with this right off the bat. But let's just say that this was true and we just don't have all the details. What if the sequel trilogy really is just erased? What would I think of that? What would it say about Disney, Lucasfilm, and their handling of Star Wars thus far? Let me make my stance on this clear. I think this is a ridiculous idea. I don't believe it to be true, and I think the rumors are being made up. Whose fault that is, I really do not know, and so I can't say. But I simply don't believe this idea has any real merit or substance. However, if it were true, I would be very disappointed. Why? Well, as most of my viewers know, I am not a hater of the sequel trilogy. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. That's not to say it didn't have its problems, and I'm not saying I loved every second. But the sequels reignited this franchise that seemed like it was done making movies forever, and introduced a couple of my all-time favorite characters. And while they definitely made some mistakes with this movie, I don't see how Lucasfilm could just throw them aside like they never happened. And even if they did try to do that, I don't really think anyone would buy into it. There are still millions of people out there who love these movies and would be devastated by such a ridiculous attempt to satisfy the haters. And as for those who continually bash the sequels, you have to understand that some of those people will continue to bash Disney Star Wars even after this happens, and in throwing away an entire trilogy of movies, you're just adding buckets of fuel onto their fire. Because no matter what you do at this point, these movies were made and the story was told. It's too late to go back on that. Let me be honest here. I didn't really like The Last Jedi when it came out, and I still think The Rise of Skywalker suffered because it was trying to make up for those shortcomings. But at the end of the day, I think we came out of this thing with a pretty good story, which could be made exponentially better if you simply put the right people in the right places and allow them to expand on this story. You don't just throw 3 movies away and act like they never happened because some people complained about it. So that's my take on this whole thing. I absolutely do not think this rumor is true, and I don't really see how it could be. Even if there was some truth to it and Lucasfilm was mulling this decision to some degree, I still don't actually believe it will be done. I hesitated to make this video for a while because I really don't think there's any truth to this rumor, but everyone seems to be talking about it, so I figured I'll address it and let you guys know where I stand on this whole thing. At the end of the day, I am someone who would rather accept a story for what it is and evaluate it or build upon it rather than complaining about it to no end in the hopes that it just disappears. Spreading negativity just isn't my thing, but that's just me. You guys are certainly entitled to feel differently, and I'm sure a lot of you do. but I rest my case. Like I said, I hope this isn't true. I don't believe it's true, but that's just about all I have to say about this topic, so I'm gonna go ahead and end this video here. I sincerely hope you all have a great day wherever you may be, and as usual, may the Force be with you always.